Mualani is getting her first rerun in Genshin Impact, and since the rerun is coming right before Nod Cry, many people are wondering, is she still worth it when an entire new region is about to come out? So in this video, we're going to talk about all of your most burning questions around her builds, playstyles, meta value, future prospects, to help you decide if you should get Mualani and how to make the most out of her if you do. Welcome to Jello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build. The 5.8 second half banners featuring Chaska and Mualani are here. If you're planning on spending on these or any future banners, let me recommend Loot Bar. I have been personally using Loot Bar for all of my top-ups for over a year, and I have spent thousands of dollars on my account. They are 100% safe, using currency exchange to get you discounts on the crystals that you were going to buy anyways. They have tens of thousands of 5-star reviews and excellent customer service. And right now you can get the limited edition discount pack for an even bigger discount than normal to celebrate the launch of these banners. It is extremely easy to use. Just click the pack that you want, enter your UID as well as your region, press top up now, and you'll get your Genesis crystals in just a couple seconds. Officially minutes, but that only took a couple seconds. With lootbar.gg, you get up to 25% off, and if you join VIP, you get loads of free coupons, so you can save even more. New users will also be able to get a further 10% discount from clicking my link in the description, as well as an exclusive offer just for this channel with a $2 welcome. It is partnerships like these that will allow me to continue bringing the content that I do to you, as well as support my family of 5. And as I said, I've been using them unsponsored for over a year for all of my purchases. So whether you're buying for Genshin or for any other Hoyo games, make sure to click my link to support the channel and your wallet. Thanks again to Loot Bar for sponsoring the video. First, for a super lightning round build guide update, Codex is your go-to artifact set. If you have an extremely high invested whale type Mualani, there actually are some circumstances where Unfinished Reverie can be good on her, or in some burning teams that sometimes some people use, Unfinished Reverie can be good, but we're not going to talk about that. You can look up other videos for that kind of very niche stuff. For 99.9% of players, you're just going to go with Codex. You want to go HP Sands, Hydro Damage Goblet, and Crit Damage Circlet. She gets a crit rate Ascension, so you're pretty much never going to be able to use anything except for a Crit Damage Circlet. You can use an EM Sands, although it is going to be a bit worse than HP, generally speaking, but it can depend on your substats and buffs. Theoretically, again, HP or EM Sands could be better with your substats, but generally you want to aim for hydro damage. And with Circlet, you can go with, again, EM or HP, but crit damage is what you want to aim for optimally. But if you're like coping with worse stuff, then the other ones can be fine. For weapons, her signature is generally the best. However, under certain circumstances, aka when you get the gigantic 96% elemental damage buff, Widsith can actually be better than her signature, especially since her signature doesn't really buff her burst, but Widsith does. The problem with Widsith is that you can only get the buff once every 30 seconds, so you're not going to get it every rotation. And in addition, you have a huge chance of getting the attack percent buff, which is useless, and the Elemental Mastery buff, which is still huge at 480 Elemental Mastery, but not quite as good as the damage buff. When the buff is up, it is actually more powerful than her signature. So this is something that speedrunners, especially in the Abyss, can do, because often you can one-rotate bosses or chambers in the Abyss. But for something like Stygian Onslaught, which is generally the hardest content in the game, her signature is going to outperform Widsith. Plus, Widsith just has that RNG factor that's extremely annoying. So again, obviously, if you have her signature, it's going to be worth using. Whether it's worth wishing for versus, for example, her signature, her Constellation 1, we'll talk about that later, but basically it's debatable. If you don't have her weapon and you don't have Widsith, or if you do have Widsith but you don't want to use the RNG, or you happen to have crazy cracked artifacts that can support it, Sacrificial Jade is very close to the Widsith in terms of calcs, especially when you get it to R5. It's kind of weird. You will generally be using its passive, and she will get the HP and the Elemental Mastery passive, so that is very good. It is an excellent stat stick for her. The problem is, like I said before, she has a crit rate Ascension, and you get 40 free crit rate from her artifact set. So between those two, you're already getting basically as much crit rate as you need when you add on the weapon. And so you're already overcapping. So any crit rate substats are pretty much worthless, if not completely worthless. So you're basically, you can't use that argument about her stats being, you know, using more stats, because now she basically can't use crit rate. So Sacrificial Jade is a really, really excellent weapon on her, but it does make her extremely, extremely difficult to build. Looking at other free-to-play options, there's the Ring of Yakshi and the event weapon from 5.0. You do not really want to use the event weapon from 5.0. I know it looks nice on her. I know it does synergize with her kit, but the Ring of Yakshi does give more stats. So if you don't have Widsith or you absolutely refuse to use it, it is always worth using over the Ring of Yakshi, by the way. But if you absolutely refuse to use Widsith or someone else has it, then the Ring of Yakshi is her free-to-play go-to, but it's generally always worth it to use the Widsith if you can. For her talents, you're going to want to max out both her skill and burst. Her skill is a much higher priority. It is absolutely 100% worth crowning, and I think her burst is worth crowning too. It just does a lot of damage. You're not always going to use it every rotation, but whenever you can vape it, it does a lot of damage, so it's definitely worth getting at least up to level 9 if you don't have the resources to crown it yet. And for level, of course, level 90 is a must, as she is both a hyper carry and an HP scaler. Being a hyper carry, stats and buffs are the name of the game for Mualani. The more stats that you can give her, the better. And that is one of the best parts about Mualani, is she can use a lot of stats. So as you're farming codex, you know, someone like Mawika or Kanich or Varesa, they're only going to be using crit rate, crit damage, and attack percent, whereas Mualani can also use Elemental Mastery and HP. So, and obviously she doesn't use attack, but the fact that she gets a huge amount of value from HP substats and Elemental Mastery substats, often about as big a value as crit, or at least very close to crit, it makes building her very easy, and it makes getting really good stats for her a lot easier, which makes her a better DPS in a lot of people's estimation, because most people on average are going to have better Mualani builds than they will other characters' builds. So if you judge them all at the same standard, some people feel that's unfair because Mualani is easier to build. So you're generally going to have more stats on her than others. So that can, for a lot of people, make her, you know, really a top choice for one of the strongest DPSs. For her playstyle, despite people all over the place talking about how, you know, she's annoying to play, she's cringe to play, she is actually fairly simple and fairly easy. Okay, what makes it annoying is the setup. So what you'll want to do for her rotation is generally normal or charge attack to apply hydro. You'll want to shred with Shelonin, create a crystallized shield, create a crystallize. You don't want to pick it up with Shelonin. So already I've messed things up. That's the first annoyance, because I guess we kind of have to sneak in a little bit of teams right here, but usually your Pyro character, you want them on the Archaic Petra artifact set. It's kind of sacrilegious to put Mawika on Archaic Petra, but it is technically optimal. But we'll swap her out for Pyro Traveler here, who's already on Archaic Petra. The reality is it's just too big of a buff to ignore. 35% elemental damage bonus for Hydro is just very big, and like I said, Mualani is a true hyper carry, and so missing out on a 35% damage bonus is basically like taking the goblet off of your character. It's just not worth it. So you have to find a way to make it work if you want the big damage that you see online. But as you can see, I missed the Archaic Petra because I accidentally picked it up with Shelonin. So yeah, but even still, we did lots of damage because we still got the scroll from Shelonin, and we still got the VV from Sucrose and the EM sharing from Sucrose, and we just missed the Archaic Petra from Pyro Traveler. So that's what went wrong with that setup there, but that's generally how you want to play the team. Pyro Traveler can be a bit inconsistent because the Pyro app is just a little bit slow. If you ever find you're missing applications with your Pyro Traveler, it's because you charged up your Sharky Bite too slow. Every time you run into an enemy with Mualani, she charges up her Sharky Bite by 1 level. You need 3 levels to do a fully charged bite. You always want to do a 3 charge bite unless your enemy is super low HP and you need to finish it off. It can be worth it, but if you charge up your first Sharky Bite too slow, sometimes you'll miss your second vape, and then if you charge up your third Sharky Bite too fast, sometimes you'll miss your third vape. So there is a little bit of finickiness that comes with playing Pyro Traveler, and it is generally Mualani's best speedrunning team. So a lot of people will use Pyro Traveler even over Moika due to the short animation time. Also, obviously, using Moika here is going to be taking her away from being a DPS on another team, so it's often worth it. You just have to make sure that your Pyro Traveler is C2 because that's where you're getting all of your buffs. C1 also gives buffs, and then C2 is more duration, which you definitely need. So that's generally why the Pyro Traveler version is often the best, because again, the short animation times, maximizing buffs, but also a bit annoying because of sometimes inconsistent pyro application. In addition, if you're too far away from the enemy or the enemy moves, sometimes you can also miss vapes, which is really annoying. And for that reason, a lot of people do choose to use Moika. Moika gives a buff from her burst and also does some sub DPS damage with her burst. And then some people choose to go with Xiangling. Xiangling can go on Instructor's artifact set, but I find I don't have enough ER when I do that. So yeah, she can go on Petra as well. This will fix all of your pyro app problems. However, now you have to deal with Xiangling's ER issues. And so oftentimes when I'm using Xiangling, she will not be able to get up her burst every single rotation. So I'll often be using just Guoba for pyro app, which is generally enough pyro app to still vape her hits as long as something doesn't go wrong, the enemy moves, etc., which can definitely happen. And this is where you can start to see the jank come into play. So like, you can construct teams that have less jank, but they will do less damage. And then you're trading off Mualani's biggest asset, which is just doing crazy amounts of damage very, very quickly. And it just gets finicky. You add on top of that Mualani's propensity to sometimes miss with her Sharky Bite, to sometimes miss with her burst. If you're playing Widsith, then you have the Widsith RNG. On top of that, if you don't build a ton of crit rate, like basically I have 95 crit rate, but if you're building any less than that, arguably even a 95, I'm still playing with fire a little bit, you might miss some crits with Mualani. If you decide to use her burst before you enter her skill state, then it doesn't get the Night Soul, then it doesn't get the Codex 40% crit rate, so you'll have to crit fish if you use her burst first. So you'll generally want to use your burst immediately after the 4th Sharky Bite. Or the 3rd Sharky Bite, sorry. On top of that, sometimes when you're using Pyro Traveler and you're too slow getting your 3 Sharky Bites out with Mualani, sometimes the Pyro app will run out just too soon to vape your burst, which also results in a big DPS loss for Mualani. So all of these things together can make her frustrating to play for a lot of people, including me. Mualani could be one of my favorite characters in the game. I love her design, and I actually really like her playstyle. I really like the nuking. I really like even the little intricacies and complexities I really like, but I really don't like the archaic Petra nonsense, and I really don't like the Pyro app inconsistencies. I was really hoping that the Pyro Archon or at least some character in Natlan would solve these issues, but Moika has come and went and has not solved these issues. Even though I do find her a bit more reliable than Pyro Traveler, it still has not solved the issues. And so for like a more casual player such as myself, we're still facing these Mualani issues. So with that as the background, we can keep going with the playstyle questions. When you say she's hard to play well, what do you exactly mean by that? You know, everything I just said is you have to keep all of these things in mind and balance everything together. Is Mualani more clunky to play than C0 charge attack Hu Tao? So Hu Tao is more mechanically intensive, but if you can master the mechanics, can feel more consistent. Whereas Mualani, you kind of have to adapt to whatever the enemy is doing all the time, and so it's like constantly relearning how to play Mualani. No matter every enemy you're using, every teammate you're using, there's all these different nuances to keep in your head to make sure that it's like, I call it chemistry. You're just balancing everything and making sure everything is exactly perfect, and then you get the perfect moment and it feels great, but it's challenging to do. It feels like doing chemistry to make everything work together. Teams. Okay, so this is the standard team, which is Shallonen plus Sucrose plus Pyro. If you don't have Sucrose, you don't want to use Sucrose, Kazuha does work. You can do, Kazuha gives elemental damage bonus and VV, but doesn't give as much other stats, doesn't give EM. So Sucrose is generally the better buffer, but there's some specific setups that can be good with Kazuha. You can also use Sitlali for this spot. Citlali isn't actually better than Sucrose here until Constellation 2. You can also use Citlali with Moeka here, and then you can vape with Moeka or melt with Moeka, and then also get your Sharky Bites with Mualani, and Citlali does reduce Hydro Res, so they do go together. Whether or not you get your vapes and vapes with Citlali on the team, it adds another layer of inconsistency. I've heard different things as to why I find Citlali very inconsistent and can ruin my Mualani vapes. It can be ping related. It can be, again, the timing related. I do not like it. I do not recommend it, but some Mualani mains do like it and do recommend it. I've heard multiple things. Generally, I'd like to just stick to Sucrose. If you have Constellation for Lanyan and you're fighting against really aggressive enemies, Lanyan gives a smaller EM boost but gives a shield, so can be a worth it trade-off if we get a really aggressive enemy. Maybe even that might be okay for the turtle if you find yourself getting knocked around a lot. Sometimes instead of the Anemo slot or sometimes instead of the Shallonen slot, you can use a Hydro. Candace is a very popular choice. C6 Candace does kind of ruin it, which I have, so I've never been able to do Candace properly, but Candace sort of makes up the complete free-to-play experience here. Candace is technically not that much worse than Shallonen when enemies don't have high resistances, but Candace gives a very large normal attack damage bonus and gives Hydro Resonance for Mualani, so that's very good. If you don't have Candace, or if your Candace is C6, you can always use Kachina, which is just a budget Shallonen. And you can technically also use C1 Mona, but as Mona doesn't give the thrilling tails to Mualani, it's not as valuable as she is on Skirk teams, but it's still an alright option. Some people even use Farina. You're pretty much going to have to use Xiangling with this one. Weirdly enough, you use Farina and don't use a healer, and you swap between her regular mode and her other mode every other rotation. I've done it. It does work. It's kind of silly and fun. Can work against the turtle as well, as you take so much damage from the turtle that keeps up her stacks even in the healing mode. And Yelan also does technically work. Her coordinated attacks don't activate until after Mualani's bite, and so they don't interfere with the vapes. It's worse than the other stuff. It's like worse than Candace, but that is something that you can technically do. What is her sub DPS potential? She's not a very good sub DPS. Is Mualani Freeze with Escoffier any good? So when Escoffier first came out, I tried this team and I made the joke that this would be the best Mualani team for 85% of players. I think I still pretty much agree with that. I absolutely don't recommend this team by any means. You're wasting, you're sort of wheelchairing Mualani. She's doing okay personal damage. On this team, she really doesn't want EM. It's just HP, crit rate, crit damage. Look, she doesn't do nothing here. She's getting Hydro Resonance. She's getting lots of Shred from Escoffier. She's getting Scroll from Citlali. Escoffier is getting Thrilling Tales from Citlali. The team, it does work, and my joke was that it's the reason why the best Mualani team for 85% of players is because Mualani historically only has a 15% usage rate in the Abyss, which is one of the lowest for modern DPSs, especially for a DPS such as powerful as Mualani. It's just because of all of the jank that goes into the chemistry that you have to put together to make Mualani work. This team requires no chemistry. You just use all the abilities and you play Mualani the same way. You're not going to get as big of bites, but the sub DPS from Farina and Escoffier is still there, and everything is being buffed by Citlali, so this is enough to clear all the thresholds for the Abyss, but it's definitely not recommended. It's not Mualani's best team, it's not Farina, Escoffier, or Citlali's best team. It's taking a ton of valuable supports away. Also, everyone can do not their best damage, so highly inadvisable. But if you really have a hard time playing Mualani Vape and you don't want to learn it, and you have these characters available, then you can try and you'll probably like it because it does work. I also just wanted to add that when Dendro is good, when burning is good, such as against the Papilla or against the Lava Dragon or against just certain bosses where burning is good, Nahida is an excellent partner for Mualani, as burning obviously allows to vape and she also EM shares, but you can also use other Dendro units such as Emily, who doesn't buff Mualani but does good personal damage, and then even some people use Yao Yao when burning is good, or Kale. So yeah, Dendro is also a good partner for Mualani when the content calls for it. Be real with me, how cooked am I without Xilonen? I think you should definitely aim for Xilonen. It's really the only 5-star partner that Mualani actually needs, and that's actually like worth getting for her. But, you know, using Candace or Kachina is going to be enough to clear most content because Mualani is just very strong by herself. Second Hydro Mona or Candace, like we said, Candace. My team is Farina, Xilonen, Moika. Yeah, you probably want to swap out Farina for Sucrose there. And the rotation, just as a review if you missed it before, normal attack or charge attack with Mualani, activate scroll and her passive by doing the skill and 2 normal attacks from Xilonen, create the crystallize but don't pick it up. Try not to use Shilonen's burst or else you'll eat the Hydro Aura and you won't be able to swirl with Sucrose. So you swirl with Sucrose, just 1 skill is fine. And then Traveler, you want to pick up the crystallize and then skill. I say skill after because it doesn't last all that long. So you want to maximize your time with the skill. So try and pick up the crystallize shard first, then use the skill, and then you do Mualani's thing. My friend is waiting for Mualani because he can't beat the turtle in fearless mode, in which teams will be easier for him to beat the turtle. He doesn't have Skirk, Muika, Arle, and he didn't win with Gaming. The fact of passing content is important to him before Stygian Onslaught. His waifu gaming won over everything. Well, check out my Stygian Onslaught video and see if there's any teams that you have there or any teams in the comments. Join our Discord server. There is a channel now or a chat room now for posting Stygian Onslaught clears. Join our Discord for help with that. And if all else fails, then as long as he has Xilonen, it should be quite easy to just get Mualani and clear the turtle. But if you want to try and conserve and don't get too many new things, then join the Discord and see if there's anything that you have that can do it. My Silali is C2, so wondering, does Mualani have an excessive EM thing? Like, we can have so how much? Nope, you can pretty much use a bajillion EM on her. It's still good. I don't think it falls off until after 400 or 500 EM. And she doesn't like have any EM built into her kit or anything. And even EM over the amount, like Widsith gives you a ton of EM, is still fine. EM always does stuff. There's no point where EM is not doing anything. So Silali C2 is still amazing. Give her a new potential role as a Skirk Hydra support using Scroll. How well can she play support for others? Skirk is pretty much the only team that it's worth using support Mualani on. So that would be this team. But we're replacing Mualani with the final slot. It can be Skirk's best in slot option, but it is highly not advisable to wish for Mualani for your Skirk. It's just if you happen to have it, it does work and it is one of the best options. Mualani is nice here because she can get Codex and then Thrilling Tales, and that's all. You don't use her burst, you don't use her kit at all. You're just using skill once, quickly normal attacking, and passing Thrilling Tales to Skirk. That is all. So really not wishing for Mualani for this, but if you happen to have it and you're not using your Mualani, then it is one of the best options. Just make sure that Escoffier did in fact apply cryo to the enemy, because if you didn't apply cryo to the enemy, then you won't get the scroll buff. And for the actual question, how well can she play support with others? There's currently no other characters that really care about this specific situation, and I do not expect her to be used as a support in any way in the future. Nod Cry. Do we think Mualani will stay reasonably good DPS throughout Nod Cry, or do we think she's going to get power crept? Currently, Flins and Llama aren't raising the ceiling by any means, so she's not looking to be power crept. I think she actually does have some potential for future prospects. I think a really reliable pyro applicator that does a lot of damage. Like, imagine an off-field pyro app that does a lot of damage. That would instantly like be her best support, like Shangling, but you can actually build for damage. Never mind if they were actually part of buffing Mualani, that would be huge. So there's huge potential for Mualani to get a buff. Her teams kind of remind me of Neuvillette pre-Xilonen, where there's just a lot of room, especially in the pyro slot. Like, Xilonen is very good with her, and Sucrose is very good with her. But with the pyro slot, it feels like there's no pyros that are actually properly synergistic with her. Is it worth pulling for her compared to Flins and Llama? Currently, I would say she's better than Flins and Llama, but we'll have to see, you know, Columbina and things like that and how that changes. Who has the highest pull value? I feel like Mualani has very good pull value if you're willing to really learn her. If you're willing to really learn her and deal with the jank, she has tremendous upside by being one of the most free-to-play friendly characters, but she is really annoying for most people to use, including myself. So the upside, you may never see the upside because she's just too annoying. So you don't particularly like or dislike any of them. I think the biggest advice I would say is wait and see Nefer, I think Lauma plus Nefer could be really powerful. And I imagine that Flynn's and Lauma will be more powerful than Mualani when they get Columbina, but it is not a guarantee. So it's kind of, right now, it's kind of like a we don't know situation. Do you think she'll get better with Durin or Yehoda? Which of them is supposed to be the vape buffer? I think it's Yehoda, and Durin's supposed to be the Bennett Shangling guy, but who knows? Maybe both of them will buffer. Maybe neither of them. We'll just have to wait and see. Getting into Not Crying, what kind of upgrades would a Mualani team be looking for? Who are her most replaceable teammates, and then what would they need to provide? Any sort of, like, the Pyro teammate is the biggest room for upgrade. Any sort of buffing and better Pyro app and damage would all would be very, very good. Meta and value, Mualani or Neuvillette? I think Mualani, when played properly, is better than Neuvillette, but most people are not able to play her properly, and so for most people, Neuvillette will be better. Mualani is more free-to-play friendly. She has a higher damage ceiling. She's better in single target, but she's, again, very, very annoying, whereas Neuvillette can, you know, use Inefa and be very, very much easier to play. Mualani is also very good in AoE because she charges up her bites much faster in AoE. So it's like the real answer just depends on what you value. Is it peak potential, because it's definitely Mualani, or is it actual practical value for 95+% of the player base? And then it's going to be Neuvillette. Why are so many people afraid to admit Mualani is clearly better than Neuvillette, especially when you consider Stygian Onslaught? To me, she's clearly the 3rd or 4th best DPS, and she isn't particularly hard to apply. Is applying Pyro really that hard for people? It's all of the things I mentioned, the inconsistencies, the various weird jank. She is such a good character for speedrunning. She is arguably a top 3 or 2 DPS, depending on how you value different things. You could say she's the 2nd best DPS in the game if we look at like speedrun things, and we look at value and cost and different things like that. But the reality is, for the vast, vast, vast majority of the player base, all of the different jank that we've talked about, most people are just not seeing that kind of results. I think even for quote unquote bad players, she's still going to be good enough to clear stuff. But yeah, it's just when you're trying to argue that she is like a top 2, top 3, top 4 DPS, that's when we start having to talk about the annoyances. That's the gap between Mualani and the best Natlin DPS Moika. Can we expect the gap between the 6.8 characters Flynn's and Lauma and the future best Nodcry DPS could be to be even big or bigger than that? Lauma being a support and only being one part of her team has more potential for future upside than Flynn's. Flynn's right now, with a dedicated support, is still underneath Varessa. I imagine he'll be better than Varessa with Columbina. I don't know, man. It's all up to Genshin. They don't go based on patterns. We'll just have to wait and see, unfortunately. For the average player, how would you rank in terms of DPS in general? So for the average player, I think she is in the mix of DPSs. So it'd be Moika number 1, Skirk number 2, Varessa number 3, and then number 4 is a tie based with various different things making them better or worse between Arlecchino, Mualani, Kinich, probably Flynn's if you have Lauma, or not Lauma, probably Flynn's if you have Inefa, but again, take that with a grain of salt, wait and see. Arguably Chaska, especially if we're talking the average player. Chaska's very easy to play, especially if we give Moika, or if we give Chaska, you know, one of her good teams. So she's like in the mix for, and Neuvillette of course, so she's like in the mix for the 4th best DPS for the average player, and for the really good Mualani player, she could be above the other ones. Vertical investment. Can we talk cons? I'm currently C1R1, but C2 and even C3 are seeming more interesting by the day. I wouldn't necessarily bother with C3. It's just like just a straight numbers increase, but C2, I would be very tempted if you're a Mualani main, because it charges up her second bite, or it charges up her bite much, much faster. She starts with 2 charges, so you're going to get like crazy nukes and allow you to get more Sharky bites overall. It's a massive damage increase. Really worth it. I would say the upgrade path, if you're willing to deal with Widsith jank, is C1, then C2, then weapon. And if you're not willing to deal with Widsith jank, then it's like a toss-up between C1 or her weapon and C2 and her weapon. Is it even worth getting her C1 right now? If you really like Mualani, it is definitely worth it. She's still very powerful, and C1, it increases her first bite by a lot, which is very useful for certain things. Some in multi-wave, when the first wave is weaker, it can actually be useless. So the weapon can be better in those circumstances, but against the harder content like bosses, it's just like a big damage increase. And again, depending on Widsith RNG, it's kind of up to you which one you want to go for. C1 is also a step closer to C2, which really makes her a lot of fun. So that's also something to consider. Would it be good to get C1, R1 Mualani, and Shalone with R1? I wouldn't bother with Shalone with R1 definitely not before C2 Mualani. Mualani is my favorite character. I really want to play her. Would it be a bad investment for my account to help me clear any game content? I don't think so. I think Mualani, like Jamie pointed out something cool, she's been able to clear Dire at C0 on 4 of the 6 Stygian Onslaught bosses that we've had so far. So very, very impressive showing from Mualani. I think she's very flexible and I think she's very strong. It's just like, if you're willing to play her, then she's great. If you're annoyed by her, then she's terrible. I have Mualani C1 and I really love using her. Do you recommend getting her Sig or C2? If you have C1, I would recommend getting her C2 first, just because it's going to make her so much more fun. And then you can get her weapon if you have extra pulls. I guess one thing to keep in mind is that her C1 is 15 pity cheaper. So it's like 13 pity cheaper for the weapon banner than the character banner. So that's if you lose both, you save 30, you save 26 wishes if you lost twice getting her weapon. So it's pretty substantial, but at the same time, you can't just try for a 50-50 because then you'll lose the fate point. So you need to make sure you're on guarantee, you have guaranteed. So it's really a toss up and you can't really go wrong with either her C1 or her R1. If you're already at C1, I don't know, her C2 looks really fun. So I think that I would recommend her C2 before getting her weapon. But if you're like, depending on where your wishes are at, right? Maybe the play is to go for the guaranteed on her weapon, then you can try a 50-50 for her C2 and if you miss, you can get her C2 on the rerun. Whereas if you get her C1 and you don't have guarantee for the weapon, then you'll lose the fate point going over. So that's something you can consider as well. Wishing help. C1 Mualani or C2 Chaska? Ooh, I think C2 Chaska is the bigger increase here because it basically fixes Chaska's kit completely, whereas C1 Mualani is a really nice damage increase, but I feel like the C2 Chaska is going to be bigger. So if it's just straight between these two and there's no other factors like enjoying event of play, anything like that, I would go for the C2 Chaska, assuming like you like both characters the same, you know, all of that kind of stuff, but you can't go wrong with either. Both are excellent. I have Mualani and her weapon R1, C0 and her weapon R1. Is it worth going for C1 or Chaska's weapon, knowing that I like Big Nuke with Mualani? It depends on if you feel like your account needs more teams. And so like having 2 DPSs is going to be 2 like solid DPSs is going to be better than 1 hyper invested DPS. If you're feeling really short on teams, going for Chaska's weapon could be good. But if you're feeling like you have enough teams, then going for C1 Mualani sounds like you would really enjoy it. It's hard to tell without the rest of your account. Maybe join the Discord for some extra help based on the rest of your account. What do you think about her running so late into Natlan despite being the first 5-star in the region? I think it's just like a popularity thing. Like people don't really like playing Mualani, so people weren't really anticipating her rerun, so they just delayed it until now when they know people are going to be skipping for Nodcry anyways. I think it's the not enjoying the playstyle thing. Is pulling for her weapon to replace R2 Widsith a good choice? Yeah, if you hate Widsith, I think pulling for her weapon is a good choice. Considering I'm saving for high invest Columbine and Alice, so probably getting Nicole on her Alice supports, I'm trying to 100% all to that to get all the primos. I mean, for damage wise, you can just stick with Widsith and then save for Columbine and Alice. You can always, like, you'll probably get more Widsiths eventually, and even if not, it's still a really good weapon. Just, I guess, think about to yourself, do you care more about investing in Mualani, or do you care about Columbine and Alice more? And that's sort of just like what you have to do for yourself. I feel like either option is fine. Keeping to use Widsith is fine, so you can save more for Columbine and Alice, and getting Mualani her weapon is going to be fine as well, especially if you don't like using Widsith. Would you recommend her for a Catalyst-only challenge run? Catalyst only. Okay. Who are the catalysts? Sword, Catalyst. Okay, so you can do Mualani, and then who's your off-field pyro? I don't see one. I don't see an off-field pyro. Did I miss one? Did I miss an off-field pyro? I didn't miss her. I didn't miss Yanfei. She's right here. She's not an off-field pyro. So I suppose...
Are you done with your video?
No, this is the final question.
Sorry.
That's fine. You can join. You can be featured. It'll be at the very end. It's like, I think you can do this. I think you can do Mualani, Sucrose, Nahida, Yanfei, and oh my god, you can infuse Sucrose with Yanfei. And of course, Nahida. This will actually work. You swirl the Hydro with Sucrose, you infuse her burst with Pyro from Yanfei, and you get the burning going, and then you have consistent off-field pyro for vaping. So yes. So yeah, I do recommend, very much recommend, he's not a catalyst. I do recommend Mualani for a catalyst only. Very much. Well, maybe the best character for a catalyst only. Let me know your favorite Mualani stuff down in the comments. If you're going to be pulling for her, make sure to check out our podcast, Waifus and Slander, featuring our co-host April, who surprise joined us at the end of the video. And if you don't want to do any of that, that is totally fine. Just watching the video has been more than enough. Thanks so much. Bye for now.